Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning. How is everyone?
It's kind of a yeah, it's a cold morning. It was snowing right when I walked in. Now it's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, it's cold in many ways. Depending on when you listen to this, see that transition?
It's great.
Depending on when you listen to this, the invasion of Ukraine has just happened, and I don't know about everyone else listening, but just talking around this table before we push record. I think Ken, you have some relatives, your wife's relatives, you have some extended family that might be affected, and I think we're all kind of feeling it and thinking about those people there. And I thought maybe during this next half hour or so, we could do a special current event edition of Agency Exposed and talk a little bit about how war or sanctions or cyber attacks, all of those things, how it might come into play and affect what we do as agency owners and working in agencies. So maybe we can unpack that a little bit. Brad, do you have some thoughts on?
Yeah, I was just perusing. Is that the right word? Perusing? That's not the right
Perusing.
word. Perusing.
Yeah.
Perusing
Nice.
the Twitter space and just looking at, sanctions and thinking about what are things, for instance, that the United States can do during this time that could put some pressure on Russia. And, I think of companies like Apple and how, I don't know what the percentage of folks in Russia who own iPhones, but, if we deem that U.S. companies can't do business with Russia, does that mean that Apple would have to shut down all their services that they provide? For Apple, does that mean that their phones basically become just nice hotspots? Why they don't have access to a lot of things?
Which could be detrimental during this time for a lot of people.
Can Twitter shut down all their access in Russia?
Yes, please.
You know what I'm saying? And
Just in general.
Yeah, and so if you do business with somebody who's on the naughty list, what is the government's role in that? And it's a kind of a dicey thing because these companies are international. And once you shut down something, you could also, people use VPNs and stuff to get around a lot of things, but where does that lie? What's the government's role in that? And
what's the potential trickle-down effect to us here in the States, or
Is there
or
any
in other
precedence
Western
for doing
countries?
anything? Precedence for that kind of thing?
I don't know. There probably is.
I know in the banking sector there is, because that's what a lot of the sanctions have to do with, and they freeze assets, and I believe they can't transact. So clearly, it affects some private banks.
Yeah, and just so you know,
is there a history of private companies?
Yeah, I'm all for sanctions. I'm not saying we shouldn't do sanctions. I just don't know what the effect will be, because if sanctions happen, it's typically commerce, and so it's dealing with corporations, especially in the U.S., that deal with that sell to Russia or buy from Russia. And so, what would the financial impact be in the United States? We don't think about that. I think the Europeans have it a little bit worse because of the oil dependency that they have for Russia, and that's really probably going to hit a lot harder. But it is, I guess, a sacrifice.
Do any international large companies like that have anything in Russia that shutting it down could potentially affect? Like, for instance, is there a main center or a hub or a source of resources?
I'm sure Apple has, a couple of pretty nice Apple stores in Moscow, I'm assuming, and they have probably in Kyiv, they have, stores.
Right.
They're all operating stores.
But no hub for the rest of Europe.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't think Apple does in that part of the world, but it wouldn't surprise me if they had,
some operations. Maybe Microsoft or someone like that.
Yeah, they might have a lot of that stuff. And so I haven't done a lot of research on it, but just the stuff I've been seeing, I'm just, questioning in my mind, what.
I was watching, what was going on yesterday was obviously, yesterday was like the big kind of invasion that had happened, right? There was this debating of an invasion, then it happened yesterday. And so I ended up coming across about, in June, I believe, of 2021, there was this interview with Putin from, I guess, a U.S. journalist. And it was about an hour and a half long. It was really interesting. So I watched it, or kind of skipped through it, but what was interesting about it, and I didn't know this, and maybe, I'm not in this world, so maybe people listening to this that are aware of this but a lot of people view cyberspace as the new like battlefront.
Right.
And I've heard that said by politicians and things, but I heard him talking about it. And I thought, wow, that's really profound. It's like a profound shift when, when we view that as an actual battlefield.
Are you familiar with Anonymous? The hacker. Well, apparently they're on a front now. They're coming out saying they're doing some pretty incredible hacking in Russia right now. Like they're on the front. They're our front line, I guess. I don't know, but where does that become warfare?
I didn't realize.
Where does that become warfare? Like
it is. I think it was funny because not funny, but at least in the interview, Putin was saying that he would like to create some sort of treaty where that doesn't happen. Which I don't know. It's hard to believe anything that you hear. But those are at least the words spoken.
How can you stop a rogue hacker, though?
It's crazy.
That doesn't act as a character for the government. It just acts as a character for humanity.
But what's interesting is being in technology, it goes, again, maybe this is stuff that is obvious to some people, but it just started to occur to me. Obviously, there are the influences of hackers in, things like, the meat packing plant thing that happened a few months ago, and obviously the oil pipeline thing, which was pretty was a big deal, for a lot of people. But we hear about things like the Sony hack that happened, in I think 2016, 2015 or something like that, where someone hacked into Sony for what reason, right? And that's the question mark. We hear about Russian, or just interference in elections, right? And the at least accusation of that. But what we don't realize, and I don't think a lot of people realize, and this is where maybe, I feel as the tech community, we're, all agencies are deeper into tech than most other average companies, right? And there are obviously some that are deep. This is something where being on the forefront is very important. Because it is like having a strong military. Because what you don't realize is everything, literally almost everything, like if a hack happened, they could shut off all the electricity, it could take down the power grid. Think through the number of days or weeks that you could go without electricity, especially at certain climates. It would be it would be like warfare. Would be more extreme than most wars than we've experienced in the US, right? Because we haven't had to deal with people here.
Yeah. They don't need to actually physically come on.
So you can get closer, right? Yeah. And I think for the first time, or maybe not the first time, but like within a new way, I was made aware of being someone involved in technology and the internet. And Web 2, 3, and all these different technologies that are coming out, and the U.S. being a leader in that area, do we realize that we need to continue to be super cutting edge in that area, because we don't want to be asleep while there's a strength building.
Yeah. Back in 2017, I was just looking it up because I wanted to confirm. I think it was our national military or security alliance, whatever it's called. I couldn't find the exact organization, but the one in the U.S. That is combined forces, they acknowledged that cyber warfare was a legitimate new frontier that's equal to land, air, sea. And so since 2017, I know this country and other countries, even before that, but since then have really, there's a whole division of cyber warfare, cyber security in our country, and I know other countries. And you're absolutely right, Ken. I ran into yesterday, I was in the grocery store, and on my lunch break, I ran over to grab something. There's a gentleman standing there. He's probably, I don't know, a little bit younger than me, maybe in his mid-40s, and he was asked me, he's like, he was looking for some medicine or something. And we got to talking, and he just retired from the military. And he's like, yeah, my buddies are getting called up, and I just retired after 20 years, and I never got called up. And of course, he was real eager to talk about what was happening over there. And we got talking. One of the things I mentioned, and he acknowledged too, was the concerning thing is exactly what you said, Ken, is that if Russia and China were to get together and say, we're going to have a planned cyber attack on countries that oppose us, i.e. the U.S. and other NATO-backed countries, it's something to be concerned about. And not only concerned about, it's something that we should really prepare for. And it's as agency owners, but also as just as citizens.
Yeah, exactly. Today what was it? Trying to think of her role with China, but she came out and was saying that this is the U.S. fault, because with Ukraine, because we didn't, and NATO, but obviously directed at us. She called us out, the U.S., just because we didn't provide Putin a good negotiation that Ukraine would never become a NATO country. Like a guarantee. We never did that, I guess. And so, but again, it's this casting blame. There's a lot of narratives that are going on right now. And I think
politicizing.
There's a lot of stuff going on right now. There's a lot of narratives. And if you understand the narratives and you keep an eye on them, what you're hearing is it's primer. They're primers. Right. They're primers for a lot of things going on right now. And if you keep your eye on, and I'm not a conspiracy theory person, and I don't really like talking too much about politics, but just keep your eye on a few things.
Well, with this kind of stuff happening, I do have this. I mean, I've had this opinion for a long time, and I think a lot of people do. But maybe we just talk about it for a second. The idea of casting blame, is a really detrimental one. And the sad thing about it, and I was discussing this with somebody yesterday. A lot right now, it happens a lot inside of our country. And so, and it's a cliche that, if we appear divided, it's really hard. It's really easy to threaten us.
Yes.
And we're very vulnerable, but it's the truth. And what I would love to see people doing is realizing that it doesn't matter if you dislike, who the president is, or you love who the president is. The idea of disrespecting the leader, especially publicly, like you can have really big problems with whoever the leader is, but what company in the entire world, let's bring this back to like an organization side, like what company in the world or in history where the employees and the team and all the people backing the leader, the CEO, where they publicly humiliated him or her or disrespected them, or we're fighting. What company ever succeeded that way? Yeah. Right? None. It's even if you're not even if you're not for the person, it's really detrimental to you, to us, to be doing that and to be casting blame. And so when you say like the casting blame thing, I think it happens a lot internationally, but the really kind of challenging thing is it happens a lot clearly in the U.S. and it's not good for anyone. You could hate who the president is, right? And the great thing about the U.S. is you have freedom of speech, and it's not to squelch that. It's just wisdom. Like It's not wise to be publicly disrespecting the leader on a world stage, right? Like other world leaders can see your little Twitter post or whatever, right? Because it's all public, and so when you're doing that, you're hurting yourself,
right?
And that's I think that's underneath all this, because I would imagine that someone like, or any country in the world that does bad things, but like a country like Russia with Putin, I would imagine that they'd be much less likely to do that if there wasn't just chaos going on, or the appearance of chaos going on in other countries that would oppose them, like the U.S.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I really am glad you brought that up, because, we love to scapegoat. We all do it, and it's easy to blame lots of things on anybody, whether it's a president, ourselves, or our bosses, or our spouses, whatever it may be. But the ability to hold your tongue and to, like you said, just to respect other human beings for the human beings they are, much less leaders, whoever they may be. I was sitting here thinking, that's a really good point. What if, an NFL team that we love to watch football, and the rest of the team's like, our quarterback's a jerk, and they just talk bad about him all. Do you think they're going to go to the Super Bowl? Do you think they're going to succeed? And look, I get it. Country politics, that's a totally different animal. But in times like these, when we have international threats and mob bosses running huge countries that really think they're above the law in every way, we really should show the world and ourselves and each other what it looks like to be good human beings and to play as a team.
And even if you don't care about that, if all you care about is yourself, it's like the leader is factually the leader.
Right.
So it's in your best interest to make sure that the rest of the world respects that person.
That's right.
Right. It is not in your best interest to make sure the rest of the world disrespects that person. Right. Because he is the leader, she is the leader, right? And it's
kind of like saying if in a marriage, like if you disrespect your partner in front of your kids and you expect your kids to respect your partner, it doesn't work that way.
Right. And clearly this isn't a marriage.
Right.
But the social structure is still the same. You're right. Like no one else is going to respect that person if you don't. Especially if you're from that household and from that country.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's a great application and all the way down to our business and the way we run our organizations.
Well, if that's happening in your organization, right? Like that does happen. And, I always think too, I don't want to be in my organization. I try and find out if people are there jokes about me? Am I doing weird things? Is there an area of what I do where it's like, he's doing that again?
Imagine in our organizations if we had a red team and a blue team.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely.
That guy over there, I think he's on the blue team.
It's called the marketing team and the development team.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, but I think within businesses that culture happens all the time.
It does. And we see the effects of it.
And the effects of it, for sure.
It happens, but then it doesn't even happen publicly as much, right? When it starts to get public, that's when like the company basically crumbles, right? Like you see, maybe the best example is like, publicly traded companies, that happens from time to time. How long between all the internal pointing fingers before the CEO is ousted?
Right,
like,
exactly.
Not very,
When the CEO has lost respect, the board is going to pull him at some point.
Well, he's useless at that point. Same with a coach of a team.
Yep.
Yes.
Once the players don't respect the coach, the team is ineffective. And unfortunately, as far as politics, you don't have the ability to just fire the person.
Yeah.
Right. So whether or not you like them, they are there for a period of time.
Yeah. Now, the curveball in all of this is if I'm a citizen sitting in Russia listening to this conversation, that only works if we have a free and somewhat ethical environment that our leaders work in, right? So,
well, that's why it's a balance, right? And I think the flip side, there is a positive side of being able to disagree with the leader because it's a democracy and a business is not a democracy. So I get it's not exactly apples to apples. So it's important to have that ability and not to get put in jail for that.
Right.
And that's not happening exactly in the US, but there are elements of it with social media that may be happening, which is not great. But the ability to say it is important. But the wisdom to say the right things is just that's why the onus is on the people to do what's best for the people, which is not disrespect your leader. Yeah. You can disagree with him all day long, but you can disrespect him. Like that's the beauty of the freedom of the country, but it's just not in your best interest.
No,
and that's the problem. And
unless there's some sort of injustice that you perceive as hurting other people,
which is a valid discussion.
Right.
I'm saying like blatant disrespect,
absolutely,
which happens pretty often, and there's like slangs and like labels put on, like goofy labels put on people, which does no good. I mean, you look at the rest of the world like laughs at that kind of stuff.
Well, look at the difference between, when we were growing up, even 20 years ago, 10 years ago. But look back, our government and our leaders functioned in a way of, we disagree about most things, but we really respect each other and we work together and find our points to where we can move forward on things. And we represent everybody in the U.S., but we always, we're going to disagree when we're debating these, but we're going to go out and have a beer afterwards. And that was the norm in our country until recently. And I think you're right. I think a lot of us long for that, to be able to be like, let's respect each other. We don't have to agree, but we can at least respect each other.
Even if you're just a selfish person, you're like, for self-preservation, let's respect each other. That was just so obvious and evident. And I just,
so do you think that this whole thing has transpired because of that?
I am not.
Do you think
actually,
that,
maybe I'm more qualified than most pundits. Maybe we all are.
Well, I'm just saying that.
But I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not experienced
I wouldn't
enough.
say that's the sole
I can't imagine
reason.
it helped.
Yeah,
right. Like
exactly.
when you have a climate where there's COVID, there's a lot of uncertainty in the world,
Sure.
and there's a lot of sort of disunity. In some of the stronger countries, it's like, well, it's probably the best time to do something like this, right?
Yeah, and our country's sitting around pointing fingers, going, "Oh, it's because of the last president," and other half's going, "No, it's because of the current president." And Putin's like, "This is a great time to do whatever I want," because they're definitely delighted.
He's a smart guy. I mean, I say that, not crediting him to anything, but like you watch these interviews with him, and I've only seen this one because I don't think they've done any for 20 or so years with the U.S. And this was last year. It's on YouTube, but you could tell like he's very intelligent. I mean, and you'd have to be the leader of any country, especially a country like that. But this is not lost on someone like that because because it's the reality. So I don't know what can I know we're on.
What can we do?
What can we do? Yeah, as business owners, I got some ideas.
Yeah, go ahead.
But like. I think that, I think that we really need to kind of mature up. And I think as brands, the good thing that we can do is we have a voice to, rather than like throw stones at people with that voice and do disrespectful, silly cancel culture garbage, which is just, I think, an element of this disrespect, right? If I say something and you don't like it, then I just cancel you. You have brands doing that now. I don't know. I honestly don't know the context around it, but I know there was something about the author of Harry Potter getting canceled and like them and someone wanting to strip them of their. I don't know the validity of it, but my point is, it was a big brand like that ran a commercial about it. It's like that kind of stuff shouldn't happen, Let's promote being mature grown-ups.
Yeah.
Even within disagreement.
Yeah, let's promote having a debate of ideas and let the best ideas win.
And letting people live their lives, even if you disagree with them.
I was on LinkedIn yesterday, and there was a guy out of Amsterdam that posted something, and it's something called Designers United for Ukraine, and his post said, urgent call here to everyone. We're starting to collect names of designers and design businesses interested in helping displaced Ukrainian colleagues to reach safety and continue to work. If you have any thoughts or opportunities and would like to brainstorm together, please connect with me on the channel below. So that's Designers United for Ukraine. So you can go search that up on Discord if you're interested.
I mean, that's the other thing. A lot of developers and designers are in these areas right now.
Yeah.
I got an email yesterday from it's a fairly popular plugin that a lot of people use, that we use, and it was just saying that the head of the founder or whoever runs it is based in Romania, but their entire staff is in Ukraine.
Oh, wow.
And he was literally going through the different people and was like, this person, last I heard, was in a bomb shelter. Mm-hmm. This person, and then he was basically saying, we're going to be slow to be able to do anything, support tickets, all that kind of stuff. as a lot of the people that utilize a lot of these resources, there's certainly things that we can do to help that. You've got staff in Romania.
Yes.
Brad.
What can, and they're, the climate's different there than it is here. Obviously their view is quite different and their lenses are different. And, it's a little more heated area there. Obviously they don't particularly want to be neighbors now with Russia. They share a border together. But what do brands? So, there's a lot of like cities are lighting up buildings with the Ukraine flag colors, and they're. I'm just a little concerned because like what can they do? You know what I mean? It's right. Like, I guess you can
we feel helpless.
Right? So what do you do? What does a brand do? What if a brand has power? Mm-hmm. Right? Should they use it at this point? Should a brand be speaking out to the point where a portion of their customers are looked as bad and a portion, and the rest, you know what I mean? Should they?
I believe if I was the head of a brand, and I could be totally wrong and see this differently in a few weeks, but at the very least is show some solidarity for the people of Ukraine that, this is not right. It's, like I said, it's a mob boss taking over a territory that they have no business. It's an independent, free country. And so I think at the very least, showing Russia and Putin that we stand in solidarity with those people, and that it's not okay in any way in any universe. So, that's the very least. But as far as practicality of what you're talking about, that's a tough one because Russia is a big country.
There's not much a private. Right. I would say there's literally almost nothing that a private company can do for this particular thing, other than show support and compassion, and help the people that whatever happens.
I think there'll be a lot of opportunities after the war, during the war.
There are things we can learn from it and do in general, like be aware of, we're a tech company, like get really good at tech, and not just for the sake of we do e-commerce, and not just for the sake of building e-commerce, but that's a cyber battlefield. Or that's a battlefield, cyberspace, right? That's what's considered a battlefield. And maybe it seems really far-fetched from all of us to what are we going to do,
Right.
But the truth is if you lined up the entire population, most of the people that we work with would probably be in the top 1 or 2% of skilled people in technology, I would imagine, right? So maybe there's something you can do. I don't know.
I think just being aware of opportunities, like displaced people that are not going to have work, probably, who may be displaced out of their home. They don't have opportunities to continue to support their families. I know you work with people in Eastern Bloc countries, and there could be some opportunities there. I think we're going to see over the next few days and weeks lots of practical things as far as donating and hospital. One of the most heartbreaking things I saw yesterday was, I don't know if you guys saw it, it was in some sort of bunker or basement. They had moved all the newborns out of a NICU. Did you see this? And they were, it was hard to watch that these new, literally babies that were hours old. Some of them looked like preemies on these just cots and beds, and they had all the tubes, and the nurses were trying to, take care of them. And
I think it's an interesting time because we're watching something unfold in real time. We're live, we're watching live. The live video of it in real time. And we've seen that in the Middle East, but for some reason, I think we're here in the United States, we're a little more connected to, to Europe us. Because they're more like us. For some reason, we feel more of an identity to them. And we're seeing these folks who, like you said, you're going into hospitals and you're seeing it almost as if it was, you can put yourself in their shoes a little easier for some reason. I think it's because of the culture,
right?
And it's tough, and it's my mind has a hard time getting around that. and you feel helpless.
Coming off 2 years of helplessness and fatigue, to then be confronted with this, it's overwhelming for a lot of us. And I think hopefully we're learning a little bit more about empathy. And I think, it goes back to what you were talking about earlier.
That empathy is something I struggle with, but not in these type of cases. Typically in cases where people, maybe people have brought it on themselves, but that's not here. And yes, it's just part of my personality trait.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens with, we were talking earlier about the companies and what, these sanctions are going to affect any of these companies. What do you do? I mean, I would have to assume that if you're a global company, right, and you have business in every single country that you can, including Russia and Ukraine, and here, if you're an American company, I'm sure there's a lot of challenges right now that these companies are going through and trying to
at the very
navigate
least,
this whole thing.
At the very least, going back to the original discussion that we started this with, is lockdown. Make sure everything is secure. If you are involved in any kind of cybersecurity for your clients or yourself, just make sure your data, double and triple check. Make sure everything's updated. Make sure if you need to add certain layers on your tech stack, whatever that may be, it's probably a really good time to do that right now.
Yeah, and it's not just about, when we talk hacking, it's not just websites being hacked.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, do that in your home.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Everything. Yeah, your home too. Yeah. Just it's a good time to do it. Well, gentlemen, thanks for the discussion. A little bit off topic, but it's certainly relevant. So
yeah, hopefully it helps some people process things, and again, there's very little seemingly that we can do, but I think there's a lot we can learn, and maybe there is some things that we can do. But learning, I think, is critical in this type of thing, and hopefully, I would love to see in the U.S. like we're really good at things. We're really strong. I have a great, just really talented people, and it's sad to see like the immaturity. So I would love to see people just kind of mature up and stop being idiots, so that at least to the public we can be a united front.
Yeah.
So
cool.
All right,
gentlemen. Until next time.
All right, guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Talk to you later.
Yep.